Dr. Tovah. Welcome to the studio. It's lovely to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's a blessing. Thank you.
Before we get started with our conversation today, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I've not had a disease or chronic pain like some of the people that you and I have met and have been privileged to help or assist or speak to on our broadcasts. But I've been, I had a mother who had multiple sclerosis, and this beautiful lady in her 30s got this disease, and then she spent the next 25 years fighting it, really fighting it, doing everything from macrobiotics to snake venom to all the medical conservative ways until she was a vegetable after 25 years. And it changed my life, and it helped me understand or want to understand many things, many questions. It helped me, gave me a lot of questions that I spend every day in my life answering and helping others answer. But myself growing up, I was in the hospital when I was 2 with some kind of tube down my throat, with some kind of mold on my throat. And then I was diagnosed years later with Crohn's, but I saw that I got things that happened to me, but it never stopped me. And so I think what I began to understand from my own health and my mother's health was that we have choices, and some of us aren't educated enough. My mother wasn't. I wasn't until I started to learn that the medical system is one file. It's one place to go to, and seeing how much power we give it or not. I was talking to a friend today, and I said, "Do you read the side effects of your medicine?" He said, "No." I said, there used to be a big, thick book about the physician's desk reference, and we would read the side effects. I said, maybe I don't read the instructions with my new car. I get it. We don't want the details, but it's fascinating about people, how we give our power to any medical authority, and we lose ourselves. So that's maybe the point, is we don't believe that our mind and body are connected. So we give our body to someone else, and we don't realize the deep relationship going on when we do that. So that's part of the big question and the big answer.
And I think you said a couple of things that I think everyone listening or viewing will be able to connect with. First of all, yes, we do give a lot of power to the doctors and the diagnosis and their opinions, and also that we do believe that there is a problem with the body, and we forget that actually there is a mind that is connected here. And like what we are going to talk about today, there is actually a very strong, important connection between the two.
Yeah. And just to summarize that, my logo is finding the doctor and the therapist in you. And some people they're not interested. I'm the messenger. You take this and go. Take this knowledge and heal. And I can understand that it's like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't believe in myself. I need, I don't have the education. And so we're not here to change the educational system, that we're not learning this. Our kids are not learning this, but many of us will get sick and then learn. And then we're in a different state. Many of us will preventatively figure it out and not get sick. Many of us will get well from the medical system. Me and you were talking about, a certain percentage of people, medically unexplained symptoms, people whose body attacks itself, people whose souls are crying out, as Dr. Netobuto says, like the cancer is the cry of the soul. And so these are the people, and then we get to meet the people that answer that cry and heal. And it is so possible. And maybe that's to be the name of my show. Like, it is like one woman's who healed MS was impossible. Something like impossible is not, it's like there's no word. Like it's possible. I forget what she said. Something very catchy. Impossible is not an option. Maybe that's impossible is not an option. It's like Ben Gurion. You have to be a realist to believe in miracles, you know. So that's where I think you and I are speaking the same language as well.
But I think the more I interview people for the summit, and I sometimes I wonder to myself, maybe I should rename the summit, and instead of calling it untangling natural healing, cancer healing, to call it and it was completely gone. Because people keep saying that they went to the doctors after they've done the whatever modalities or method they've used, and they came back to the doctors, and the doctor said, I can't find the cancer, it's completely gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but but uh, but I like this introduction to this topic of the mind body connection. But I also, just before we get more into that conversation, I want to ask, so you come from the medical profession, right? I mean, you have a degree, you have a medical training.
A chiropractic degree. So it's like there's a doctor of medicine, a doctor of dentistry, a doctor of psychiatry, a doctor of psychology. I'm a doctor of chiropractic. So I go to school, I take a test, I spend 8 years, I dissect a cadaver. It's a doctor of a specialist of the spine, of the nerves. So I feel very blessed to be behind that 40 years this summer. It's coming up to 40 years. So I'm earning that title. I'm proud
Yeah.
of it.
But at what point did you realize that actually it wasn't just about the body, but that
Yeah.
there is another element which we
Yeah,
should
that's a
probably
great
pay
question
attention to?
because I remember being a chiropractor, not yet, it was 20 years ago, and somebody handed me The Anatomy of an Illness by Norman Cousins. And that's just an amazing story about his humor and the endorphins. And, he got this arthritic disease, ankylosing spondylitis, and he healed it through watching Three Stooges movies and injecting vitamin C. And it's an incredible story. And that was just like, I resonated. And then maybe a few years later, and then various things happened in my 20th year of practice. And then the last 20 years, it's been rearranged. Like I moved to Israel, my soul got rearranged, and I got involved in the mind body work, and my brain and my whole way that I approach things is just enhanced. And I'm so privileged to have gotten into this work and how it happened. I've always been open. Maybe since my mom's MS took her to get snake venom, or she actually had a remission eating macrobiotics. She ate brown rice and umebochi plums, and she had like her longest remission. And I think those things stuck to me. Like, wait a minute, the food she eats is the gas in her body. Wait a minute, she feels better when she eats different food. Like, so I had this all inside of me, and someone turned me on to Dr. Sarno like 20 years ago, and I called some people involved with the movie, and they were just right there, and I just one thing led to another, and I got very involved here in Israel with the John Sarno work, and there's a handful of us here involved in that, and then I led me into more studying neuroplasticity, which is how we can change the brain in order to regulate the nervous system. And this is something you can do by talking to it, by persistent, by repetition. It's like creating new neural pathways. Like the man with the phantom leg has to teach himself the pain is in his brain. He does cognitive behavior therapy or all kinds of this different behavior. And so this is what neuroplastic work is about. And I started taking many courses with amazing doctors. One of my mentors is a spinal deformity surgeon who himself had 19 symptoms and couldn't cross a bridge without a panic attack. And this is the brilliant mind that's doing spine surgery. Look at the paradox in that. And he got out of surgery because he saw that it wasn't helping. And he started working with this work. He's one of my mentors, and I study with him. He's actually, it's a good point. He's writing a book. The second book, one book is about spine surgery and why you don't need it. The second book is about repetitive, unpleasant, intrusive thoughts. And the power that he brings to this next book, he puts down all the science, is our thoughts create chemical changes. And this is regarding cancer. This is regarding the quantum physics. This is all about Joe Dispenza and my topic here, the placebo and the effect. And it's really, it almost sounds woo-woo. It almost sounds woo-woo, but it is been studied over and over again. And we can scientifically, not that many of us need that, but some of us do. We can notice what's happening in the brain when I think a certain thought. They're measuring this, and this is not so important. I'd like to say that it's scientifically backed up, especially with Joe Dispenza. Dr. Jim Doty is a neuroscientist who talks a lot about the law of attraction and neuropathways. And so the point I want to make to simplify it is that your thoughts can heal you and your thoughts can harm you. And we're talking unconscious thoughts, not always conscious thoughts. And that's why your job and my job is to help people bridge the road between their conscious mind and the unconscious mind. You don't have to be Dalai Lama to do this. This is just a habit we learn. It's called awareness.
So how do we bring this forward? I mean, this summit is all about people on any of the cancer healing journey. Maybe they've just been diagnosed, or maybe they've been going through it for a while, or maybe they're in remission, or maybe it's a family. How do we bring that into their awareness? How do we start this conversation that says, hang on, it really is not just about the body, and how do we introduce this idea that there is a mind, and actually there's so many more layers, and I think I would like to spend some more time in a bit talking more about the neuroplasticity and all of that, because it's so important. But let's start from the beginning. What is that connection with the mind? What should people that are going through
partly I wanted to join your summit because I believe that autoimmune disease and chronic cancer are in the same file. I believe that cancer is the body attacking itself. I call it, I'm not going to, some people question me like it's not autoimmune. And I'm like, it is. MS is autoimmune, and MS is the nervous system attacking itself. And an inflammation, which is the basis of a lot of cancer, and of course, MS and other neurological diseases, is created by the body protecting you. And this has been studied. I learned this from Dr. David Hanscom, the spinal surgeon, a lot about inflammation. And they're finding the basis of all diseases is inflammation. So I just want to make a point here that when we have an anxious thought, when we feel fearful, the body will create an inflammatory response. And many times the body can move through that inflammation, move it through the blood system. But sometimes it begins to create imbalance. It begins to create disease, dis-ease. And my hope is that anyone who is open to understanding and not questioning why, but being curious. The word curious, my body is imbalanced. My body is creating pain or disease. What's going on? Let's have a relationship with my body. Let's hear what it's saying.
And that message is, I talk a lot about the message, but as you were talking, I was thinking maybe what we just need to say or mention is that cancer is a symptom. Is not the thing that's wrong with us.
Wow, I love that. And so if it's the symptom, then if it's the symptom, then what is the cause? I mean, so basically, it's not the disease. So you're saying, I'm curious. It's cancer is not the diagnosis; it's a symptom. And so, what's the diagnosis? That the body's imbalanced or the body's emotionally deregulated.
From what I'm learning is, yes, I mean, there's a few different things that we can bring here to really understand what is it a symptom of. And yes, emotions is a very important part. I mean, nearly everyone that I speak with, that we all talk about emotions. There's of course other elements of extra stress and nutrition and stuff, but yes, let's talk about the emotion. Let's talk about the mindset. Let's talk about all this suppressed emotions and suppressed feelings that we've been doing for such a long time. Let's bring it onto the table.
Yeah. So I see, chronic pain and autoimmune disease and cancer in the same place of the potential of healing and the possibility of people having let's just move to something else, which will come up in I'm sure a lot of your discussions. It's how scary is it when somebody gets a label, a disease? How scary is it, and how that in itself becomes the issue, the fear, more than the condition, the inflammation, the possible pain, the possible disability. It becomes the fear, and that's what we start to understand, and then it becomes the thoughts about the fear. And then you and I have talked about the Byron Katie work. Well, who would you be without that thought? And what if you turned it around, like our colleague Gila would be, well, I loved my cancer. I began to love my cancer and love my body and not go against myself. And in some part of my life, maybe I was in conflict, and now I don't want to. I want to create peace. I want to create a sense of clarity and understanding, and a message and a pathway to understand what my body is saying through this attack. And again, I like the neuroplasticity because even though I've studied the nervous system and I dissected a cadaver and, did all this stuff with the nerves, I didn't understand the fight and flight mechanism. And understand that the sympathetic, and the parasympathetic, where we live in fight and flight, and then that we could live in rest and digest. And I didn't even understand how well and how we can learn to be in the parasympathetic nervous system. We can tap into that whenever we want. Now, a lot of us do that. We smoke a joint, we smoke a cigarette, we have a drink. I'm relaxed. I'm in my parasympathetic. Well, I say to people, I want you to be your own marijuana. I want you to be your own cigarette. I don't want you to have to rely on something, though it's okay to do that. But I want you to be able to have that ability to relax and calm your fears and calm your thoughts. And that becomes a chemical change. Just like Norman Cousins, listened to Three Stooges movies and he kept laughing. And that laughing, not only did it change the chemicals in his body and help his arthritis, but it said something to the brain. It gave his brain a message. So I think, to summarize, because I get a little off topic, which is a little bit of my excitement, my anxiety, and a little bit of my ADD, is that people have choices. Let's bring this around. We have choices. And when we get a disease, whether it's a headache, a migraine, or the label of cancer, we are full of fear. We're facing our mortality, which we don't usually have to face. And I think at that moment, we don't believe that we have choices. And some of the doctors are not saying to you, it's okay. We're going to figure this out. Let's work together. Let's have a plan. Let's do this. This is the doctor of the future, as opposed to, well, I'm not going to get into what the doctors do. I'm not against doctors. Doctors do amazing things for cancer. We're talking about you and I, the people who are not getting well with the medical community, who have medically unexplained symptoms, who choose to do the more alternative way, who choose to get to the cause of the problem and not just treat, the cancer. We want to get to the cause.
And I think it's interesting. It's exactly that. When you get the diagnosis, this is your opportunity to really pause. And now you have a choice, like you say, what do I do? Now, some people, of course, want to go through the conventional methods, and I know that there's a lot of fear and pressure for a lot of people to go down this route. But what we are saying here is that actually, let's examine some things. Let's see actually what is it, what is this new diagnosis say to me about me? Like you said, the body is in conflict. What is this conflict? Let's start to explore things, because I know that, of course, some years ago when you got a cancer diagnosis, it nearly immediately meant death. But nowadays, you really just need to Google something, about percentage of survivors and stuff like that. It sounds a little bit grim, actually. But when you look at people who survived and recovered, there's so many of them. And so now
Yeah.
I really do believe that there's more weight to that conversation about message. What is the message that you got with the diagnosis? And now should you go down the let's fix the body part, or actually let's
Yeah.
fix the
Yeah.
mind?
Yeah. And there's, this response to my title of my talk here. There is so much and so many amazing people and so many books and so much richness of healing in our world when people want to be the placebo and they want to be well and they want to be their own medicine and they want to cause their effect. They don't want to be a victim. They want to be in control. They want to be, completely responsible and completely, like I call it like the Matrix. They want to, whatever happens, they're going to be okay. They want to be, like no matter what happens, they're going to be okay. They can get chemo. I mean, even Gila got chemo. Many people get chemo. There's nothing wrong with chemo. It's just we don't want to just, we don't want to stop there. We want to understand what happened from the very beginning. So part of my vision for people is to guide them until they can take the reins, until they can cause their effect, until they can have any symptom from A to Z. And they'll understand their fear relationship with what's going on. They'll understand what their body's saying. There'll be no surprises. They can look, because aren't we talking about your body and it's not against you? And we're back to the brain. The brain is never punishing you. The brain is always protecting you. The body's always striving for wellness. We have a whole pharmacy inside of us. When we deep breathe, when we have belly breaths, diaphragmatic breaths, we're creating everything from cannabis to heroin to opioids to incredible amount of chemicals that can heal us. We don't even realize the power we have, and we haven't even talked about God, and bring God into the picture and bring love for self and love for the world. And, so I'm all about empowering people to believe that they're not a victim of their label, their disease, their symptom. The body's not against you. And the people that you and I have met that have healed everything from A to Z was able to learn this language that no matter what, I'm going to be okay. I am my own medicine. I am my placebo. My thoughts matter. Doesn't mean you can't think a negative thought. Doesn't mean you can't be angry. Doesn't mean you can't be sad. It's really about a relationship with these feelings. You asked something about the feelings, and I went off on a tangent. And the thing about the emotions and the feelings, especially with your work, is these emotions are triggering your body to behave in a certain way. So we need to understand the relationship of our emotions and our body, and that's a whole nother topic. But just the importance of our feelings. They say, let's get better at feeling, and then you'll feel better. And like, oh, that's woo-woo, Doc Tovah. And I'm like, this is what they study, that pain is an emotion. Pain is processed in the amygdala, where fear and anger and shame and sadness, and these are emotions that this unconscious mind perceives. And the research is the unconscious mind is the body. And here we are back again. If the unconscious mind is the body, then we have a lot of power here and a lot of choices, which is really what my little talk here is about. You are the placebo. You are the doctor. You are the navigator. You are the conductor, the pilot.
What you're saying is actually, when we connect to what you just said, it brings a lot of empowerment, and really helps to disconnect from the fear and this, rabbit in a headlight kind of moment where you've had your diagnosis and now you're like, really, what do I do? And so here we are saying, yes, actually, you have choices. You are the pilot, you are the navigator, you have choices and abilities, and you can change your reality, and how empowering this is, really. Now, I want to ask, so that's what you do, right? So someone comes to you and you start, you guide them on this journey of understanding the fears, understanding the emotions. What does that journey look like?
Well, what many people are discovering, and again, it's so individual, so personal. One thing will work for one person, one thing will work for another. But what all these methods are, I believe, what you do, what I do, they're somatic methods. They're so mind body ways that we are affecting the nervous system. We are calming the nervous system. We are activating different chemicals in what we do. We're creating energy, just like what acupuncture does. The same thing that the motion code will do. It will shift an energy, because when we breathe, we create different energy. When I think a certain thought, I create certain energy. When I sing a song, when I meditate, when I breathe, when I hum, we haven't even talked about the vagus nerve. When I just breathe deeply, I'm changing the way the vagus nerve, which is the biggest nerve in the body, how it circulates, how it circulates the blood, and where it circulates the blood. And then I bring in exercise. I think movement, and my being a chiropractor for 40 years, movement is so important. And what we do when we get sick is we stop. We get into that fight or freeze, and we stop, and we think things will change if we just stop. So what I've learned is that movement is one of the key somatic things, whether it's Tai Chi. I've met so many people that have done Qigong, cancer people. I mean, it's very big in the field when people have the diagnosis of cancer or some symptoms of cancer. Qigong is the centering exercise, Tai Chi, but the Qigong, and I have 3 books on my shelf about Qigong and how when you're working on your center or your Qi, you're changing, like you're affecting the cancer cells. I mean, this is a whole nother topic. So that's just in movement. We haven't even talked about going for a jog or going for a swim or doing yoga. We're talking about just moving and bringing calm to the body, bringing calm to the nervous system. So I think exercise is very important. And I don't care if you're walking around the dining room table, it's about movement, it's about trust. And what we learn as a chiropractor is that your structure affects your function. So the structure of your spine and the structure of your muscles and even your posture and your awareness of it and the way that you are with your whole soft tissues affects the functioning of your nervous system. So I love that connection. It's kind of like another mind body structure and function. I want people to breathe deeply. So many of us are not breathing, we're holding our breath, you know? So, um, another tool, which you've probably talked about and understood, is expressive writing, journaling. You know, when we write and we express ourselves on a paper, what are we doing? Not only are we taking thoughts from here to the paper, which is neurological, but we are visiting ourselves. And so many times we don't know ourselves. And for many of the people that you and I have met, the the pain or the disease, it's like it's like a bridge to say, please come close. So journaling, expressive writing has been studied in research. It's a powerful, powerful somatic tool. And there are people that do it and find incredible results. It's not easy. I'll take my pad and I'm doing this 25, 30 years, and I'll be doodling and I'll say, who don't you want to visit, Tovah? Who are you avoiding? But then I'm like, you're allowed to avoid yourself tonight. You'll do it tomorrow night. So it becomes this interesting relationship with ourselves. And many people who are on the other end of healing disease and pain find that they have met themselves in a way that they never would have before. The journaling can help that, the meditation can help that, exercise. There's other somatic methods. I'm certified in something called pain reprocessing therapy, which literally helps to change the neural pathways. It literally, neurologically, psychologically, and emotionally will change the language of the way that your brain speaks to your body. And this has been studied in some research, and I'm happy to share all of this with anybody that contacts me. I love sharing free resources. I love sharing some of these movies that I've been involved with. One is called Love Heals, which has been studied about how the awareness and love can help people heal many diseases. A couple other movies about healing pain and the brain. Anybody wants to contact me, I love educating, and that's what you and I are doing. We're really saying, look, here it is, apply it, implement it. It's going to be like a new course of study called The Rest of Your Life, but you can do this, and we're here to cheerlead you all the way on this journey.
I want to ask, I mean, absolutely, totally resonate everything that you just mentioned. But I want to ask a little bit about the neuroplasticity and the understanding that we have that we can change our brains, we can change the neural pathways, we can change our reality, we can change everything. How do we take this understanding and apply it to cancer? Can we reteach our brain that actually, whatever is in the body is not, or to start looking at it in a different way?
Well, what happens, which I think is important with cancer, is that all of these somatic methods that I mentioned change the when we have anxious thoughts and they're perceived by the brain and body as fear or as like, I got to protect you, inflammation's created. Just like we know that, when we're in fight or flight, our muscles change, the blood flow goes to the leg. All of a sudden, I'm, I need to pee or not to pee. Different things change in our whole system, our whole fight and flight mechanism. And I was studying something this week called the salience network. The salience network is this network in the brain that the brain chooses what's important. Like if you're running and there's a lion after you and you sprain your ankle, you're going to keep running. You're not going to feel pain. The brain is choosing to protect you. But if you fall, on the street and you're just getting up, you're going to be in excruciating pain because that's the focus. So what that cellular network is about, the brain chooses what's important. I say that again to say that you have choices. So back to answering your question regarding cancer, it's an inflammatory process in the body. We all have cancer cells. Why certain cancer cells choose to go astray is what we're talking about, which is not the topic right here. But basically, you will create much less inflammation. You will create much more balance. You will create homeostasis using these somatic methods. You will get better at feeling and then feel better, or you'll feel better. We all want to feel better. We all want to get a clean, SED rate. We all want to have no symptoms. But sometimes, this is very important, sometimes we have to accept the situation first without conditions, and then the symptoms go away. So we change the relationship with our body and we accept, we become aware. We have no expectations. We just live our life, go to the doctor, get chemo or not, we go to the gym, we live our life. And what people are finding is that the cancer tumor shrinks. There's less inflammation, or they can live. I've met tons, 10, 12, 15, 20 people living with MS, living with plaques on their nervous system, but have no symptoms. So my goal would be to understand how your body creates inflammation, to find ways to understand, to relate. Let me change that. I think what I want to say is that with people with cancer, and I've not worked specifically with many people. I work with people with many autoimmune conditions and many chronic pain. I've interviewed many people who've healed cancer, and that's why I feel like I can come and speak about it, because there was nothing that they did which was different than what people with chronic pain or autoimmune disease did. And I just want to bring home, and I'm not sure anyone will talk about it, is how inflammation is created in the brain and why your brain's creating inflammation. And then when your body decides to create, to get blocked, and then whatever the cancer cells are doing, I'm not sure I understand that part as well. But more so, how do we regulate our nervous system? How do we understand that our anxious thoughts, our fearful thoughts may be activating a brain that's protecting us, and we feel punished, and really what's happening is the brain's protecting us. And if we can understand our fight and flight mechanism, I think it would help a lot of people with cancer. I think it would help a lot of people with disease to understand how, why, when, where, why not our body is protecting us and hurting us, but that's not the purpose.
But that's exactly what we were saying right at the beginning, that when we get diagnosed with all these conditions and we want to fix the body, we are actually masking. We're not listening to the message. We're not going to that deep place where the answers are. We're just saying, hey, what is the cure? Fix me.
Right.
But
That's it. That's it. There you go. We're not broken. We don't need to be fixed. We don't need to be cured. I think the people that I've met that have healed autoimmune disease, everything from ankylosing spondylitis to Crohn's to all sorts of pelvic conditions and horrible chronic pain conditions, they've let go. They've let go. They've let it be. They've stopped fighting. You know, this is a beautiful thing. I worked with an organization in Israel healing cancer, and they said that we're going to meet the cancer. Remember back in the old days, it was let's fight cancer. They meet cancer, and I was so turned on by that. Let's meet the cancer. That's what I should have titled this. Let's meet the cancer. Let's hear what the cancer has to say. The cancer cells are not against you. They're not here to bring you down. And this is where, you know, Gilly was like, I loved my cancer. It taught me so much. So what can your cancer teach you? And the people that, and this is the elevated quantum physics work with Joe Dispenza and other neuroscientists and Bruce Lipton, the biology of belief, you know, love heals. Let's talk about that woman, Anita. What is her book called? I'm dying to
be me.
Dying. Yeah.
Dying
What's
to
her
be
book
me.
called?
The book is called
Dying to Be Me.
Yeah, and Anita Moorjani.
The two women that did the movie Love Heals, which is an incredible movie, they're doing another movie with Anita because they met her through this movie Love Heals, which is in the Love Heals is all involved in the chronic pain world, but it moved into because of the power of love healing and the power of some of the Eastern ways of breathing and Qigong. And there was the movie was filmed out in Arizona in one of the places where the vortexes are in Sedona. Mm-hmm. So this is it. This is it. I love it. I brought myself around to I'm dying to be me. So what is Anita saying in that? If she was sitting here with us, this is what we're saying. And not look, we're not Anita. I couldn't imagine being diagnosed with cancer, but you have choices. You're not a victim. You have support. There's so much support out there now for people who want to dive into this world of getting to the cause of really what's going on in your body. What's the message? What's your body saying?
And I think you say it beautifully, and I really believe that people are able to connect to this message of exactly that. When I get diagnosed with cancer or other conditions, how do I go within? How do I find all of these things that I've suppressed for so many years? How do I find my answers? But I want to ask just briefly to talk about, because you just mentioned it about the inflammation in the brain, what causes that? And I thought actually that's quite an interesting question to ask. So maybe you can share with us briefly what does causes inflammation in the brain and how.
Yeah. Well, I would love to have studied that more, but just from what I've studied relating to chronic pain is that, and I read it in Joe's book, like indirectly, inflammation is the cause of most diseases, an inflammatory process, whether it's inflammation from a cold or inflammation from a flu to an inflammatory process where the cells start to, I don't have the knowledge to talk about it, but I want people to know what I do know and what I can back up and what I've learned with talking to Dr. David Hanscom, and he's got tons of podcasts and tons of information. He speaks to many doctors, is that when we are in fear mode, when we are in threat mode, when we feel threatened, our body will create inflammation as a response. And as we know, when many people get triggered and then they calm down, you know, like I'm in a red light and somebody's going to hit, and then I'm like, oh, fight, and then I calm down. With some of us, the system doesn't calm down. Yeah. The system's still living in the trauma or the threat. So we're creating this inflammatory process that becomes the new way the blood flows. I mean, it must be fascinating to think about this. But I think that people like Naida Alexander, the scientist, and Gila, who spoke to her cancer doctor and learned a lot, she learned a lot, and she teaches it about like what the cancer is saying and what happened in the blood system. Like, and people can teach that and teach it to the layman. This is what happened in her body.
Mm-hmm.
The body. This is what happened in her body, and I find that fascinating. And I think what Gila did is she went to her doctor and said, I want to know what my cancer is. I want to know what happened. And her doctor, it's in her book. Her doctor spoke to her and explained to her, what's going on with the cancer cells. And I find that, and we were talking, Gila and I, because people don't want to even mention the word cancer.
Yeah.
Like they don't want to mention that they have cancer. And that's it's an interesting relationship with, like,
Yeah.
if you think about it. So I think Gila talks about this because she really went into the science and went into what happened, and she let herself be vulnerable. And I think when Anita is dying to be her, this is vulnerable. And even Dr. Hanskin will mention about vulnerability. What is vulnerability? It's knowing yourself. It's like, I call it like being naked with your clothes on. It's a relationship. And we're back to relationship. And look, these cells are dancing together, and somehow they're tangling, and sometimes they're untangling, and sometimes they're blocked. And what is inflammation? No movement. No movement, blocked, stuck. Create a dam, create a tumor, create a dam, stop. So again, I'm a little out of my
I think
limit here, but I love exploring this, but I don't want to take your time for my exploration right now. We'll stick with what I know.
Yeah, no, but I think all of it is very interesting, and like I said, I'm sure there's really a lot here to give people listening that first step. If it's a stepping stone, right? Let's take that first stone and look at, what is it? Where can I go with this? What can I explore? And I mean, I've been talking to a few people that share their survival stories and recovery stories, and all of them are really saying, this cancer journey taught me so much. So let's get on that first stone and say, okay, what can I learn? Where can I go with it? It's not true. Even in the most complicated cancers, it's not true that you are 100% going to die, right? I mean, you will die at some point, like all of us, but it's not necessarily from the cancer. So if we put this fear to one side, what can we study? What can we learn? What can we, find out about it? So it's a very, it's an interesting place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for going there with me.
Thank you for this conversation. Thank you for everything, the wisdom and the guidance that you brought.
Yeah. And I'm happy to send anybody this paper on inflammation by Dr. Hanscom. And he has a couple of podcasts with internal doctors, internal medicine doctors, and just talking about some of this and talking about the threat, safety, and the inflammatory process. It's fascinating to me, and I got very excited about it, but I don't know enough to talk about it. But I'm happy to pass on these resources. It's like it's so much knowledge. And again, the knowledge is power. And then when we implement it, then the healing happens.
Yes, because it becomes that choice that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Dr. App, thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you for sharing your time, your wisdom, your experience. Thank you so much.